Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. This is going to be a discussion style video, which are honestly probably my favorite types of videos to do. Now, I don't know how I'm going to title this yet. I don't know if I'm going to title it something along the lines of like Bandai sneakily implementing things without our noticing, and I kind of want to shed some light on it. Not that it's a bad thing, I just find it pretty interesting, to be honest. Or I might go with like just a plain title and talk about how Bandai's design philosophy is changing pretty drastically, in my opinion, going into set 22. Now, again, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'll kind of talk about and lay my opinions out in this video. I, of course, have mixed opinions on that. I can never just pick one side of the fence in these things. But I do want in the comments below what you think about what you've seen so far in set 22. And maybe you guys will realize more of what I'm talking about as we get into the video as far as like their new design philosophy goes. So we'll cover that in the video. If you guys are new, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a video. And if you guys do want to help support the channel and you want to buy any cards we talk about in this video, or any trading cards for that matter, it does really help me out if you were to use my link in the description to TCG Player. I just get a small kickback from it. It doesn't cost you anything extra if you're already planning on buying trading cards. I really do appreciate it, as always, guys. Now let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so far, what we've seen in set 22, the main card that comes to mind when I want to talk about this is Bio Broly. So if we start reading that card, just start with the activate main. If your leader's a Broly card and you have 3 or more energy, play this card from your hand. Now, this is like unprecedented in the past like 5 sets, I want to say, because we've taken a really far step away from free play in the Dragon Ball Super card game. And if you read that effect of Bio Broly, there is no energy cost attached to that. And that might cause some people who have been with the game for a long time to kind of snap their head back and say, whoa, what is going on here? Like, we're doing free play again. And the reason we had that kind of reaction is because we had a real big problem with free play in the Dragon Ball Super card game just a couple years ago, where like one format that comes to mind, for example, is Mecha Frieza, which used free extra cards, King Piccolo, which played a lot of small free battle cards, and then Dark Broly, which played honestly a lot of really large 30k battle cards for free. And that was one format where the top 3 decks all happened to revolve specifically around free play. But those are not the only instances of free play that we've had in the Dragon Ball Super card game. I think the ban list for set 17 roundabout was the one that axed so many free play cards, because in a game that uses mana or energy, to keep balance, you have to play cards that use mana or energy, right? If you can just take free actions, we're more so just like playing Yu-Gi-Oh, where true resources besides the cards themselves don't exist, and then like balance is absolutely off the walls. So Bandai, in my opinion, has done a really good job of walking away from that. But then we come to set 22, where we see this free play skill. But now you got to read a little deeper, because this card can't be played from any area unless you have a Jaguar's Island in your battle area and a Broly the cost of 8 in your drop. So now Jaguar's Island, very simple, 1 cost field, you play it, you search for a Bio Warrior, that's fine. But what this really means is that Bio Broly isn't really actually a free play, because it's tied to having Jaguar's Island on board. So you have to invest the 1 energy in the Jaguar's Island, and then you're able to free play the Bio Broly, which you could, in essence, look at as Bio Broly costing 1. And not only does it cost 1, but now to play the Bio Broly, you have to find a 2-card combo, which I know a bunch of you guys are saying, like, whoop-de-doo, big deal, it's Dragon Ball Super, we draw our entire deck by turn 3. That's totally true, but it's still true that it's a 2-card combo now, as opposed to 1 card just being completely free playable, or even playable for 1 energy. Like, making the card cost 1 and making it require a 2-card combo to be drawn is strictly worse than a card either being completely free on its own or costing 1 on its own. That's just the truth of it. But yeah, so whether or not you want to look at Bio Broly as true free play or not, I personally don't. I actually think it's very interesting how Bandai, at least in this set, and I'll show you more examples in a second, is kind of like sneakily implementing additional costs onto things, whereas when you read them, you might, initially think that they're free play and that we're coming back to that era in Dragon Ball Super. But we're not truly coming back to that era, because again of these like hidden costs that Bandai is sort of implementing into these cards. Now let's go to the next example, which is also in green. So we have Gohan Goten Emotions Delivered. Now the crazy thing about this is that it's a seemingly 1 cost 30k. Now I will say Bandai did a decent job of balancing this if it were a 1 cost 30k, because it doesn't have any keyword skills, and the deck that it was printed for, the whole gimmick of that deck is to give this thing triple strike and critical, so you'll give it keyword skills. That's besides the point. So reading the activate main, limit 1 for green. If your leader's green, your opponent has 3 or more energy, and you have a Z extra in your battle area, play this card from your hand. And this thing costs 1, but again, read that extra cost if you have a Z extra in your battle area. Now, the specific Z Extra for this deck is a 1 cost 1 Z energy cost card. So in essence, this thing is going to cost 2. Now, you could split that cost up amongst several turns, and you probably will play the Z Extra card much earlier in the game. That's all well and good. But at the end of the day, like, to play this card, you're going to have gone through 2 energy, whether it's in the same turn or on different turns. So when you look at it that way, you can really look at this card as a 2 cost rather than a 1 cost. And that leads me to want to compare it to Goku Gohan Father Son Solidarity, which for the same amount of energy is probably a better card. And it's not a big deal that a card in set 22 is worse than a card in set 21. I just think that when you really note the fact that Emotions Delivered in essence costs 2, I think there's a fair comparison to be made to Father Son Solidarity, and then Father Son Solidarity just ends up being the better card. But if you were truly looking at Emotions Delivered being a true 1 cost card, I think that they would be different classes of cards, right? Like, for what you're paying, yes, you're getting a little bit less on Emotions Delivered, but you're saving an entire energy. So in that case, I think these cards would really complement each other nicely, but that's not really the case. The Emotions Delivered actually cost 2 when it's all said and done. Now, I've got one more example for you guys in set 22, and that is SSB Vegito Beyond Shining. So upon first read, it's got a free Unipatara ability over a Goku and Vegeta, and it's 20k. Free 20k, seemingly very, very strong power level for what you're paying, which is nothing. And then don't forget the leader in the deck can also buff this thing by 5k, and this thing can combo a card from under itself when it attacks. So that's a seemingly 0 cost 30k attack, and the entire Dark Broly deck consisted of that. They all had to be errated to cost 1 to find any semblance of balance, which honestly kind of killed the deck, which is fine. The deck was insane. That's a discussion for another video. But yeah, when you really look at this card, though, you have to fuse over a Goku and Vegeta. So we have to invest energy into those Goku and Vegetas, assuming they're not played for free, which in this deck, they are not. However, they are played for 1, though. So you play a Goku or a Vegeta for 1, and they fish the other one out of the deck, which does essentially make this a 1 cost 25k by the time you buff it with your leader. And yeah, that's another way they've kind of snuck a cost in there. 1 cost 25k by the end of the whole process of playing this card. Now let's run a little bit of a comparison to the free play of old. So we have King Piccolo, Demonic Rejuvenation, probably the most infamous deck for just spamming battle cards for free. On your turn, on your opponent's turn, this deck would literally combo Demon Clan cards out of life and then replace that life. So it took Rejuvenation to like the absolute top tiers of power. And then you had cards like Tambourine, which were played at the end of the combo after being comboed from the life. Tambourine on his own is a free 15k, but when he swings, he gains 5k in most instances and then restands for another attack. So that is a 0 cost 20k dual attacker in essence. Compare that to the Vegito we just read. Would you rather have a free 20k dual attacker or a 1 cost 25k attacker? If you don't know the answer to that, you'd rather have a 0 cost 20k dual attacker. The difference between costing 0 and 1, while it is only a literal difference of the number 1, is insane in resource-based card games like Dragon Ball Super, where we use energy. It's vastly more different than the difference between a 1 energy play and a 2 energy play. Like costing 0, you can do as many of those things as possible, granted the cards in your hand allow you to do that. But if cards cost 1 or 2, you're limited by exactly the amount of energy you have in your energy pool. When things are free, you're not limited in any way except for potentially by card effects. So it's a huge difference. And this is what we had in the past. Like I said, Bandai took a real harsh stance on this stuff, banned a good majority of anything that was free in the Dragon Ball Super card game, and they went ahead and printed King Piccolo World Conquest Awaits, which actually re-implemented free play at the beginning of the Zenkai block. And we all knew this when this was printed, it was meant to be a nod to the Red King Piccolo because it functions in a very, very similar way. However, look at the Tambourine for this deck. This card can also be played for free, but it's only a 10k, so it's barely a threatening attacker. And on play, it kills something. That's not bad. And if you want to get a draw out of this card, you have to pay an additional 1 energy. So like at the end of that exchange, if you want to draw a card, it ends up being a 1 cost cantrip with a 10k body, which is pretty decent because most cantrips only have 4 or 5k power. But this deck was like never particularly great or meta or even like that great on the rogue level, right? So when they did go ahead and revisit free play, they super underpowered it, which was probably the right move to make because again, like the difference between a 0 cost play, a 1 cost play, there's a mile long gap of difference between those two costs. So I want to just kind of shed some light on times they have revisited free play and how they purposely made it super underpowered, which again was probably a good move. Now overall, what do I think about this like change in design philosophy for set 22? I mean, I definitely think it's a much more balanced approach to quote-unquote free play, and I can't even call it true free play because, again, you have to invest energy in other things in order to use the free effects on these new cards, which is certainly more balanced than anything Red King Piccolo was doing, right? All you had to do was play the cards in your deck, the leader would naturally put them in your life, and then the leader would, for free, combo them out of the life and then play them. So there was really no energy requirement at all to get this engine going. But for the stuff in set 22, like the fusion here, like I guess the cheapness of emotions delivered and the free play on Bio Broly out of control monster, there is energy required to be invested, which I do think overall was a smart decision. I think this is pretty cool, like a cooler way than just saying like, okay, play Bio Broly for one. And obviously the Broly deck in and of itself is like very thematic. It wants you to go through basically all the Broly movies in one deck, which I do think is pretty cool. But yeah, overall, I don't mind it. I hope it's just not like too confusing for players. I had a perfectly fine time like kind of following along and understanding what Bandai wants you to do with each of these decks. But I can see it being maybe just a little bit confusing. But overall, I kind of like it. It's definitely just better than being strict free play. But in the comments below, guys, I do want to know your thoughts. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.